Yeah, but you,
Cool. It's looking better. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We're back. Yay. And we have almost 800 people back with us. Also, yay. It has been quite a day already. I was much more glamorous this morning. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to our community members who have come back for this second session. For those of you who are coming just for this session, this is, I'm not gonna lie, probably my favorite session of the day. And then we will be breaking out into subject matter specific sessions. So today has been all about helping smaller nonprofits and smaller businesses and organizations that have never done business with the city, the county, or the state to really get the information they need to succeed in this era of ARPA funding and recovery funding, funding that will probably not come around again in 2 lifetimes. And one of the things that came up in our morning sessions, which makes this session even that much more important, there were so many small organizations that were asking things like, how do I do an article of incorporation? What does this mean? I need what kind of policy? And I said, come back for this afternoon plenary because we got the experts for you. And so I am going to get off screen and turn this over to one of my favorite people in the world, Dory McWhorter, who is the president and CEO of YMCA Metropolitan Chicago. True disclosure, she used to be my boss, and so I will always love her. And I know she's going to do an amazing job. So I'm going to step out, and Dory, I'm going to turn this panel over to you.
Wonderful. And thank you, Tina. With that build up, I better not disappoint. And so the fortunate thing is that I have amazing panelists that I know will absolutely deliver on the promise that you've made to the audience today. I'm so excited that we can have the conversation, particularly with these ladies that you see here. And so why don't we start with just a quick introduction so you all in the audience know who we have here to get us going. But first, I will take one point of privilege as the moderator and wish you all a happy Black History Month. And I have to say that because, I don't have to say that, I'm saying that because just to let you all know just how special the Chicago area is. Not that we don't love our full state. Monique knows that we love our full state. But I will say that the Chicago YMCA on 39th and Wabash actually was the place where Carter G. Woodson founded Black History Month. So I had to throw that in there, a little bit of history today, given that we are in the midst of Black History Month and talking about how to support so many businesses and nonprofits that are looking to continue to make our city and great state a better place. So having said that, Chandra, why don't we start with you and introduce yourself, and I'll come back around for presentation, but start with introductions.
Very well. So thank you so much for having me today. This is such an honor. And, you know, before I tell you who I am, I want to tell you I come with the spirit of a Duke Ellington, right, to honor, right, our legacy ancestors. And as a musician and artist, I think that that's very important. So my name is Chandra Richardson. I have the privilege of working at the Chicago Community Trust, which is a communities-based foundation, many of you know, in the Chicago region. And my role there is really quite simply to be a connector and to steward a couple of grant-making portfolios, one of which is around small business development. We are hyper-focused on closing the racial and ethnic wealth gap and looking to do that through supporting entrepreneurs of color. So thanks a lot.
Welcome, Chandra. Monique.
Good afternoon and happy Friday. Thanks for that warm welcome, Dory. My disclosure, Dory also serves on my board of directors, so known her for a long time. I am Monique Brunson-Jones. I am the CEO of Forefront Illinois, and Forefront is Illinois' statewide association representing both grant makers and nonprofits, as well as their advisors and allies. Our mission is to build a vibrant social impact sector for all the people of Illinois, across all of Illinois. By doing that, we do provide education, advocacy, thought leadership, and we facilitate collective action around issues that we all care about. I'm excited to bring 25 plus years of working in the nonprofit and philanthropy community and sharing the ins and outs of being a successful nonprofit with you today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Monique. And Erica, bring us home.
Thank you so much, Dory. It is such a privilege to be serving on this panel with all of you wonderful women. I have no full disclosures to make, so other than collaborating with some of these other women on different committees and things like that. So my name is Erica Spangler-Raz. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am Senior Counsel and Director of Pro Bono Works of the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. It's an organization that works to advance race equity and economic opportunity for all. We use all the legal tools in our toolbox, and you're wondering, why is a civil rights organization person here on building nonprofits and small businesses and building their capacity? And it's because we use our network of volunteer attorneys to support capacity building in community-based organizations and those that are mission aligned with ours, and also to help small businesses that are working to revitalize commercial corridors in historically underinvested or disinvested communities of color. So thank you, Dory.
Wonderful. Well, I hope you all are excited in the audience today, because I think just through the introductions, you see that we have a group of folks that can absolutely share their knowledge with us. And so what I'm going to ask is that we start with the small business side of the house and welcome Chandra to give us some more insight about what you're doing specifically at the Chicago Community Trust to help small businesses. And great job on tech support right up there. Thank you. We appreciate that. I was going to ask slides, please, but I didn't have to do that. So great.
Very well. Well, thanks again for having me. You know, this is such a critical time and just such a great space to be discussing an important issue. So thank you to the city, the county, and all supporting agencies. So at the Chicago Community Trust, as well as with many of our other funders throughout the region, you know, entrepreneurship is really a central focus, simply because it's a key driver towards economic growth and revitalization. We know that entrepreneurs are providing up to, and probably at this point beyond, 58% of the jobs in the city, and 70% of those jobs are going into underinvested communities. Next slide, please. So today, a lot of what I'm going to share with you and contribute will hyper focus on really two specific programs, the Fund for Equitable Business Growth and our learnings through our work with the Cook County program on small business recovery. So the Fund for Equitable Business Growth is a multi-funder collaborative, and I really have started to say this is truly an ecosystem within an ecosystem type of effort. So not only do you have a massive, cadre of business servicing organizations and business stakeholders, many of whom you see on the screen right now, we also have really a wealth of funders, actually, no pun intended, that are at the table, and really even experts from around the country that are now looking to us to understand the model. And so, but most importantly, really what we have is a tremendous population of entrepreneurs that we support. Please, next slide. So the fund has actually been granting to over 51 organizations. You saw that a little bit on the slide before. And really what happens is we're sending out 14 right now, 14 grants going to lead business servicing organizations. And right now that amount is over $2 million. We have actually anticipated for the next fiscal year that we are going to surpass that and probably go beyond $4 million. So it's gained incredible traction, and we're really happy about that. Next slide. This work actually really began in response to a landscape analysis that was conducted by Next Street. Before I get into that, what you see here on this slide is, the fund is actually supporting over 2,000 entrepreneurs, and that's the vision and mission. But what you need to know is that the impetus for this really began with understanding what the needs are of the entrepreneurs, hearing directly from the entrepreneurs. This was not an effort that was kind of conjured up by funders or even business servicing organizations for that matter, but it was a collective type of thought that, again, there are specific needs. And one of the things that we found, you can please go to the next slide, is through the report that was conducted, this ecosystem landscape, we found that there was actually over 135 business servicing organizations just in Chicago alone serving entrepreneurs. So that tells you that the need is really large. The demand is there for sure, but it also tells you that it's a little bit of a saturated environment, right? And so we felt that the best type of investment could be shown through a coordinated effort. heard. And so these recommendations that you see here coming out of that report is exactly what this fund is set up to address. Next slide, please. So to date, this fund started in 2019, and I can't believe as I'm speaking right now that we're already in year 2022. But really to date, this fund has helped to generate a number of jobs, really over 800 types of jobs, has really helped to catalyze a tremendous amount of funding for BSOs and capital, which is most important, getting into the hands of entrepreneurs themselves. Next slide, please. What you should know about this fund is, we're really talking about the entrepreneurs that live on the corridors and the streets that are right down the street or right next to your homes, right? Many of you that are on this call today, I know, are living right here in Chicago or beyond and have a really deep passion for your neighborhood, quite frankly. And so what we're talking about is a local economic type of initiative. And so as you see here on the slide here, Chef Majani, many of us who have, patronized his business, and maybe a few of us have put on a couple extra pounds, albeit it's healthy cuisine. Thank you, Chef Majani. We are so proud to know that his work and that staff and that community is being uplifted by the support that we're adding into the ecosystem. And so what you're looking at, this was a recent Chicago Tribune feature. And so we're really proud to be a part of that. 66% of the businesses that we're supporting really are, certainly BIPOC owned, and honestly, 54% of those are women owned businesses as well. Please, next slide. So I think really what makes this fund particularly special and what makes the approach something that we'd like to uplift in terms of learning in this environment is that really we are providing targeted investment. So this is not just a grant going to a business servicing organization and then we're saying, hey, we'll talk to you in a year of reporting. It's actually highly engaged in collaboration that's going all along the way with that support. And so what that target investment is getting to is going right into the core of the support system that surrounds the entrepreneur. Many funds that have been set up before go right to the entrepreneur itself. And in some respects, this fund is doing that. But the main focus is to get to that support system, because there's a core belief that a business owner should be able to access what I like to call an enhanced marketplace of services, right? The city of Chicago has said this very well. I know Kenya Merritt, that leads the small business development work there, says this often, that, really our heart and our passion is to make sure that businesses can walk right into their community, right to the front doors of a business servicing organization, get the licensing help that they need, really identify contracting, opportunities, work with anchor institutions. So really what we are trying to create with this effort is a one-stop shop that really meets that business owner where they are. And hopefully, if we're doing it right, helps that owner to sustain over the course of the years of their ownership. So what you're looking at on the slide here is really 6 key strategies that get right to that. So building the capacity of those businesses servicing organizations. When I think about a women's business development center, or a Sunshine Enterprises, or I could go on and on, a Greenwood Archer Capital, these folks are so passionate about the work that they do, and they're really smart because they know that alone they cannot lift that tide, right? This particular demand and what's needed really does depend on an integrated approach. And so that's exactly what we're doing here. Next slide, please. So one of the key successes that have come out of this fund, and really we're really happy to say that we had this infrastructure in place to be able to respond to this, is the Cook County COVID-19 Recovery Small Business Support Program. In 2020, none of us entered into 2020 knowing the magnitude of what was going to hit our economy, right? And you see these stats here on the screen, but the truth of the matter is you certainly don't need me to parrot those stats for you. We feel that on a personal personal level, and our entrepreneurs certainly felt that at the personal level, economic level, community-based level, and every single level you could think of, right? And so what this fund allowed is for us as funders, as BSOs in the county to immediately lock arms and put our expertise together and respond to that particular crisis. And so some of the stats here you see is the program came together to provide technical support to entrepreneurs, $10,000 small business grants that immediately went into their operational structure and really helped to just advance even best-in-class curriculum for how BSOs can take this point in time and build out more relevant key services. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, back to the last slide. I was not aware. So one thing that I'd like to really land for today's discussion and turn it over to the other panelists is really 3 key recommendations. I understand that really the big question for us today in the city and the county and beyond is what are we going to do to cultivate an environment that will allow for our small business owners to be anchored and allow for business servicing organizations to support them efficiently in a way that sustains that support over time. And so I would like to suggest 3 key recommendations coming out of these efforts that I've learned. One is to provide targeted investment. As you've seen through the previous slides and my remarks earlier, a lot of our success is because the investment was targeted. It targeted certain industries of entrepreneurs, right? We have a cohort of food-based and beverage-based entrepreneurs, as well as those in the contracting side of entrepreneurship and so forth. So it's very targeted. Another thing is that we are standing up a strategy that will get to allowing enterprises to be more data-driven and allowing their business servicing organization partners to be data-driven. We recognize that right now technology and data is more important than ever before. So we want our businesses of color to be able to take those insights from data and to apply it to their customers and to apply it to their business development goals to stay in current times with the economy. And then lastly, what I really would like to just hone in here is, again, to fund collaboration, but not just fund collaboration. I would really urge other funders and philanthropic givers to think about how to fund agility. Now more than ever, these organizations that are supporting entrepreneurs need to be agile and need to be able to set up funding that is agile enough and flexible enough for those organizations to respond to the needs as they come and to do things a little bit differently than we've done in the past. So again, want to thank you all for giving me the time to share these key learnings, and really super proud of the work that we've done with this particular effort, and I'll yield it back to the moderator.
Thank you, Chandra. And I'm presuming I'll pop back up there in a minute. So what we'll do, just for the audience, so we will have each of our panelists do a brief presentation as Chandra did, but I invite you to put your questions in the chat, because after each of the panelists do their presentations, we will engage in some Q&A. And so please put your questions in the chat. And in the meantime, I will invite my friend Monique to tell us about what Forefront is doing. Thank you so much, Chandra.
Thank you. I am excited to be here to share a little bit about Forefront and invite you to click on some links that my colleague Lisa will drop in the chat as I talk. As I said before, Forefront is our statewide association for nonprofits, urban organizations. And while we are a membership organization, we do offer resources for folks who are not yet members, numerous benefits, as a matter of fact, at no cost to all Illinois nonprofits. We house a library, and our library includes templates for budgets and includes sample LOIs, information I heard earlier about how to create articles of incorporation, examples of organizational policies and how to build your board and board governance structures, all the things that nonprofit organizations need in order to be successful. So think of Forefront as your team, your personal help desk type of organization. In our collection of webinar recordings, we have a program on creating project budgets. So go over to YouTube and search for Forefront and subscribe to our channel. When we do workshops, we do house them there for a little bit of time so that you can continue to benefit from them. We also benefit from standards of excellence training. We have a standards of excellence licensed consultant in-house. 2 of our staff members went through that, and that provides nonprofits with common sense approach to achieving the high standards of governance and management through extensive library and educational resources. So as part of our commitment to serve in Illinois social impact sector, we did have our staff trained, and they can help bring some of the best in service approaches to serving your community. And the other thing that we have that people don't often know about and sometimes get a little confused about is a program called the Mission Sustainability Initiative, or MSI. And it is really focused on our dedication to helping nonprofits thrive and providing the resources for leaders. We talked about agility a little bit earlier, to regularly explore collaboration and strategic partnerships, not just mergers, but back office. Think about things of co-location. If you are running an organization with similar but not all the way services as another organization, think about what you can share, how you can collaborate, probably create a joint venture, merger, or acquisition. We do have a website on that as well. It tells you about the stages of exploration, what it looks like to really go into a partnership. And even if you don't want to have a full merger, what it looks like when you're using your best resources together. Some other things that you can see on our website is a page, a consultant page that is connected to CAPE, Chicago African Americans in Philanthropy, and they list all of their BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color consultants that are willing and able and ready to work with you to build out your organization. And then we also have some free assessments on tech assistance and digital work. The last one listed here is Converge Consulting. Converge Consulting is a LLC of Forefront. It focuses on financial services, back office support. Please go to that webpage and look. If you are building an organization, and we understand how hard it can be, sometimes financial services are not always at the top of your list, but trust me, you want them to be. You want to make sure that your finances are in order, your audits are correct, and that you are staffed appropriately for the work that you intend to do. Converge Consulting is here to help you as a partner in that work. Slide 2, please. The things that we offer members. So if you become a member of Forefront, you will go through a membership orientation. And that orientation shows you everything that you need, how to access everything that you need, and what comes as a part of your yearly membership dues. We have a peer Skillshare program. This is recognizing that a lot of our colleagues in the field are very, very talented, experts in their own right, and are willing to share their skills with their colleagues across the state. So it's a matchmaking service that we connect nonprofit folks across the state, designed for short consultations, specific questions like, how do I get a permit for the office? How do I get a permit for a raffle fundraiser that I want to have? Because we want to do that. How do I create a pivot table for Excel? Don't know about you, but Excel bothers me sometimes. So having someone that could tell me how to create that chart has been really helpful. Other common questions: how do I evaluate program success, which is different for every organization. Hearing from your colleagues about how they've done it in their organization is very helpful. So one of our advisors said it best for Peer Skillshare. She said you could spend an hour on Google and still not feel certain that you've answered the question. Or you can use Peer Skillshare and talk to someone who's already done the work. And I don't know about you, but I'd much rather talk to someone who's already done the work. Another benefit of becoming a member of Forefront is the research support from our nationally recognized library. We have one of very few libraries that offer you access to individual donor research, including candid, salary, benefits, tables every year when you're evaluating how to pay, how to hire, how to maintain staff that is competitive to your colleagues. You need the research, and we hold that research, and we have access to it that we share with our members. We also offer what's called an Impact Capacity Technical Assistance Tool, ICAT. ICAT is a tool that allows you to, of course, answer a set of questions, audit your program, and it sort of spits out some areas that you need to focus on, some areas that offer you ideas on how to grow your organization, sustain it, and what areas you want to concentrate on. That is a free benefit for members, and it is a value of $350. So it already pays for itself. I just heard earlier about possibly organizations that don't yet have their nonprofit status. Forefront also serves as a fiscal sponsor for organizations that meet our criteria. If you go to our website, there is a link there that asks you to answer a few questions. And those questions are, do you have a governing board already and a budget? When do you intend to become an official nonprofit organization? If you've already applied, we can answer those quick questions and then meet with my CFO and myself and have conversations about how you intend to grow over time. Next slide, please. And all those things that may or may not, you may not be thinking about, going through the question of if you want to become a real nonprofit organization, gets you into thinking about all the things that it will take to do so. So this information on the screen now is Doris Bowen. She's our membership manager. She's also the person that can tell you where to find everything at Forefront. So if you email her, she'll be able to tell you what it could take to become a member, as well as the benefits that you will have as a member, or if you're not ready to become a member, what benefits you can access at that point. Thank you, and I look forward to the Q&A.
Great, thank you, Monique. So again, put your chat or put your questions in the Q&A, and we will follow up with Monique with some of the questions you have. And thank you to Lisa from the Forefront team for answering some of those questions already. And so lastly, let's hear from Erica as we round out the panel presentation section for today, before we get into the Q&A.
Great, thank you so much, Dory. I think it's really fitting. Hopefully my face will pop up somewhere on this. I think it's really fitting for me to follow Chandra and also the wonderful services at Forefront. So as I mentioned before, Erica Spangler-Raz, pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the director of Pro Bono Works, which is a pro bono program in Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. We use our toolbox to advance a modern civil rights agenda. And some of that toolbox is non-legal service, or I'm sorry, non-litigation services. So not civil rights litigation, but but we call it transactional legal services, corporate legal services that really build capacity and support small businesses and nonprofits. So I've been with our organization for 14 years. And we've done this work under various different names before. It used to be the Law Project, Community Economic Development Law Project, Community Law Project. And I just want to say that we are continuing to do the same work that we started in 1985. We're just not using those different names. So I really want to tell you a little bit about Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights first. So we'll go to the next slide to see how this work really fits into a mission of securing racial equity and economic opportunity for all. So our organization was founded in 1969, and we have the main core issue areas of education equity, voting rights and civic empowerment, community safety, and the one that I'm going to talk about a little bit is equitable community development and housing. And we partner with community-based organizations to advance this modern civil rights agenda. And we do this through our volunteer program that I mentioned, Pro Bono Work. So if we go to the next slide, we provide legal education and pro bono legal support for nonprofits and small businesses that further our race equity and economic opportunity mission. Because the work is done by volunteer attorneys, all of the work that goes through the Pro Bono Works program is with attorneys that have the expertise, that have this practice area, corporate, real estate, employment, intellectual property. So all of those common legal questions that come up for nonprofits and small businesses, corporate formation is a big one, is kind of going through this volunteer program. So let's go to the next slide, please. So one of the things that I did for these slides is I put a number of publications and links and a lot of content on the slides that hopefully will be distributed to attendees afterwards, because I'm not going to go through each of these different things. But one of the tools that we use is community education. So very similar to Forefront, we have a page of resources. It's really focused on legal resources. So when we're talking about forming the legal structure of your business, whether or not to incorporate, we have publications, fact sheets, legal alerts, webinars, and short videos. So all different things that are free and on demand, but really do focus on that legal expertise, not necessarily, board development or fundraising or program evaluation. The very valuable resources that you would get from an organization like Forefront, ours really focuses on just those legal aspects. And then for small businesses and for nonprofits as well. So hopefully those links will be distributed with the handouts. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we have a cohort training program for nonprofit founders that kind of goes through, developing a business plan, developing a budget, how to apply for 501c3 status. So we call that, internally, we call that our boot camp for nonprofit founders. It's actually called our Emerging Nonprofit Training Program. And so it's offered virtually just because of the pandemic. So that is something that is just specific. It's not on demand, but these other resources are, in fact, on demand, really easy language to understand. They're written by lawyers, but they are really accessible in a way that, say, looking at an IRS publication may not be accessible for people who are starting nonprofits or starting their own businesses. Let's go to the next slide. So how to get these resources is really to go to our website. Under the button that says Our Work, there will be a tab that says Legal Help for Nonprofits and Small Businesses. And then this side menu will pop up. And then you can, this one that's highlighted is small business resources, but then the other one below that is nonprofit resources. Let's go to the next slide. So when small businesses or nonprofits have their, they use our resources, then they might be ready for legal services. They're ready to form an LLC, or they're ready to file articles of incorporation, but they don't want to have a template. They would rather have an attorney do that work for them. That's where our pro bono legal services fit in. I will share that when Chandra shared her slide about the number of economic development organizations, we work with those organizations as community partners very closely, so they can also refer you to our organization. When we have our legal services that we offer, there are basically 3 levels of legal service. So one is this brief advice, and that's say we reviewed some of the publications that are on our website, but you have some specific questions and you want to talk with a volunteer attorney or one of our attorney on staff just about this particular question that you have. So we can schedule a 30-minute consultation pretty quick. And for small businesses, we do ask that you get a referral through one of the community partners that we work with. And then the next level of service is limited representation. So perhaps we do a clinic with one of our economic development organizations. We may draft the articles of organization, an operating agreement, for example, if it was a small business, but it's less than 2 hours. So the legal services are more than 30 minutes, but less than 2 hours. So that's in our limited representation level of service. And then what we really find that our clients find most helpful, and they have told us, is this direct representation. We do have an application process for that. But basically, we will recruit a volunteer attorney for an eligible client to represent that entity in its legal needs. So is it applying for a trademark? Is it registering copyright for a curriculum that your nonprofit has developed? Is it applying for 501c3 status? Is it drafting and negotiating a fiscal sponsorship agreement? Because perhaps that's the stage that your organization is in or you are in as a founder. So this is really the most helpful level, this direct placement, where we've identified what is the legal need. A volunteer attorney can represent the entity for that legal work for free, and can really take that piece off your plate. So as you're starting a nonprofit or a small business, or you've been operating your business or operating your nonprofit, there are so many different things that you're juggling. Perhaps we can take that legal piece off your plate and you can work with a volunteer attorney that has that expertise in that practice area. So let's go to the next slide. All right, so we have, for founders of nonprofits, a lot of the questions that we come up with are for the direct legal services, like I had mentioned, applying for income tax exemption for whatever stage your organization may be in. Do you have a board of directors? Is your board meeting? Are they comprised of all family members? So there's a lot of questions that you may have, or maybe don't understand the questions on the application for 501c3 status, and you need that attorney to kind of walk you through that process. So that's where the direct legal services come in for that nonprofit formation. Fiscal sponsorship, it could be employment questions. So we have an employer hotline, a partnership with one of our law firms that will answer employment questions. So for example, a founder of a nonprofit may say, I think I want to be the executive director, but I don't know how this works as an employer. Or it's, I think we need to expand, and I don't know if the person that we are hiring should be an employee or should be an independent contractor. And so these are really good questions to really take advantage of our employer hotline. They are just brief consultations with an attorney and with an employment law attorney. So they have that expertise and can hopefully give you some direction or provide some advice. And then if you need representation after that consultation, we will certainly follow up and see if we can help you with placement for that direct placement. And then finally, that bootcamp program that I mentioned, where it's really set up in the cohort training for founders of nonprofits that are really going through starting up a nonprofit and really kind of build that foundational knowledge. These are not pre-recorded. They are kind of more cohort based. There's 5 seminars built into that, into the curriculum. So that can be really helpful, particularly for founders that are really like at the ideation stage. They found that that is really helpful. And the way that this program is set up is that it's a small group. And so many times in teaching the program, we found that the attendees, the participants in this program really learn off each other. So perhaps somebody else is doing something where it could be a better collaboration to build a nonprofit with a variety of services or ancillary services instead of 2 people trying going it alone.
En vez de 2 personas haciendo lo mismo.
So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm not going to read these slides, but I do want to share, and I highlighted some of the different practice areas. So in corporate formation, it could be reviewing, filing, amending bylaws, or any type of corporate work, conflict of interest. These are services for nonprofits, forming the entity. It could be a collaboration. So for example, if you're an established nonprofit and you want to collaborate with another established nonprofit, and you have this program collaboration, but we don't actually know who's going to do what and who's going to have which responsibilities, it may be best to actually draft a collaboration agreement. And so our volunteer attorneys can help with that. But all stages of a nonprofit's life cycle, if there are legal needs, these are pretty much the areas that we cover. And then the next slide is for small businesses, really covers a lot of the same legal areas for formation and any kind of small business loan. Those are the ones that I've highlighted, and we'll share the slides so you can see some of the other practice areas or perhaps legal needs that you may have identified. And so if you want to go to the next slide. So this is how you can access the or apply for services. You can go to our website, which is clccrul.org. That menu that I had mentioned, you drop down into that legal help for nonprofits and small businesses. And then there is an inquiry form on our website. We do ask a number of questions about you and your organization or you and your business, about where your business is located. Do you have employees? These help us determine eligibility for our programs. And then for us to figure out the best way that we can help meet your legal needs. So the next slide, this is just a final slide that has my contact information. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dory.
Great, thank you, Erica. And I'm going to go ahead and invite all of our panelists back. And I'm going to ask our friend Tina Hone to join us as well, as I saw some of the Q&A related to the city as well. And I just want to make sure that we get the city represented in our conversation. And so we will wait for Monique and Chandra to join us back on screen.
They are on screen. Something is happening with our.
I just think it's like a delay. I think it's a delay. There we go. Everyone's here. Chandra did a wardrobe change during that time.
Just
Wow,
a blazer, just took off the
I was
blazer.
like, wow, that's impressive. So, and then if we could take down the slides too, I know that they'll probably come down in a minute, but wanted to go ahead and get the conversation started. First of all, thank you all for the information you provided. I was just thinking how lucky we are to have these resources available to us in our state. And so thank you in our city, county, and state. I want to shout out everybody. So I appreciate that we do have these resources. And so so the audience knows, I will ask my questions as well as look at the Q&A and get all the great questions there, and shout out to the team for answering some of those questions directly as well. So Chandra, I will get started with you. Just for clarification, first of all, you're right. Majani is so good. And Chef Suzakia told me, because I was eating so much of it, he's like, just so you know, it's not low calorie, but it is healthy. So now I know the difference, that vegan is not low calorie, but it is healthy for you. So I've learned that the hard way. But just wanted to do something from a clarification perspective, because I know you are specifically working with for-profit entities. Now, do you all do any work with nonprofits? I think of an organization like Dion Chicago Dream, who effectively does what HelloFresh does, but they're doing it in a nonprofit format, but they wouldn't be eligible for the Equitable Business Growth Fund.
Well, thank you for asking that question. And I, first want to say, if I was running too fast with my comments and kind of added to any confusion, my apologies. But actually, the fund is set up to support investment to nonprofit organizations. So what we're essentially doing is providing grants to business servicing organizations. I know I said BSOs like 20 times, and thank you.
And that was a question in the comments.
Exactly.
So
I saw that.
Business service organizations, thank you.
Yeah,
I missed that too, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you to the person that asked that for slowing me down there. But what we're doing is providing the fund or the grant, to the business servicing organization. And then that support goes to the entrepreneur itself. But through the Cook County effort, right? So for all my county colleagues and friends that were working with us on that program, we were able to provide $10,000 small grants directly to the business. So that's the nuance there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for that clarification. And I was listening with a keen ear and somehow still messed that up. So I appreciate that. And Monique, thank you because I appreciate, Tina, the way you set the panel up, because I think, as we know, that most folks are concerned about accounting and legal services. Those are some of the scariest parts for people. And from a forefront perspective, at what point would you advise folks do fiscal sponsorship versus go directly into a nonprofit state? Because I know that folks are always wondering, are there for-profit, a nonprofit, or what route they should take. So I'd love to get your insights on what you all do, sort of while people are figuring it out.
Well, it's more of a question of temporary versus permanency. So you should not, in my opinion, explore fiscal sponsorship as a permanent structure. It's on your way to create your organization. So we have some fiscal sponsorships that have been with us, and there's no intention to be a nonprofit organization. They are in partnership with Forefront. So essentially, think about it. If you're going to create a nonprofit organization and you have a fiscal sponsor, you are a part of that organization that is your fiscal sponsor. There's no separation. And if you want that to happen, you need to be upfront on the beginning of that. However, when you get to the point where you're growing, and of course, you already have to have your governing board, you have your budget, you're getting audited, you're getting all those things. You do need to branch out to be your own organization so that you can grow and create your own thing. So it's more of where are you in the growth of your organization rather than one or the other. I know a lot of people who have their nonprofit organizations in the form of their articles of incorporation on their kitchen table. They now need to move and create, have more people on your board other than your family members that helped you dream this up, and you need to think more formally about the service. What we do know during COVID is a lot of organizations that were doing that good work were not formal. They needed the nonprofit organizations to be a fiscal sponsor under. And now with this new wave of funding, they may need to consider growing further. Becoming a fiscal sponsor of Forefront does help you grow. We will make sure that you are in line. We will work with you to help you understand the finances. And most importantly, the government and taxes and the charitable purposes that you have to abide by as a nonprofit charitable organization inside of the state of Illinois.
Great, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Monique. And Erica, I'll ask you, it was brought up speaking of articles of incorporation, but there was a reference to both articles of incorporation and articles of organization. And so someone wanted to know the difference between the two.
Oh, sure. So articles of incorporation are for a corporation. So that's that structure. It could be an S corporation, but for nonprofits, we have a not-for-profit corporation that has no shareholders. Otherwise, a corporation would be a C corporation at the state level. I'm sorry if I'm going to too much detail, but articles of organization are filed to create an LLC, a limited liability company, and that's a for-profit with a different structure than a corporation. So when we're talking about nonprofits and for-profits, the usual distinction is, you know, is it for a charitable purpose? Like the nonprofits would be one, although there's many purposes for which you can create a nonprofit. It doesn't have to be charitable, but for purposes of this and for the funding opportunities they are. For the legal purposes, we would have, you know, the purpose is to create a profit. So you have for-profit corporations and then for-profit LLCs. So the articles of organization are for LLCs, articles of incorporation are for corporations, and then nonprofits are either corporations or unincorporated associations. So I don't know if that's too much, a little bit too much legal, but I will say, so if I can just piggyback on what Monique said about fiscal sponsorship, I think what she's saying is a point that really needs to be driven home working with nonprofit organizations is to how, when I work with nonprofit founders, I usually try to have them think about, do you need to incubate your idea a little bit longer before you know that you're ready to file for 501c3 status or to really formalize that structure? That is okay. The type of structure that she was mentioning is called a project-based fiscal sponsorship. There's different models of that, but what is really important to understand is that if you think that you need that help in that structure, a fiscal sponsor is going to be able to walk you through that process. And we really encourage you to have that open dialogue really at the beginning of starting the programs that you're going to be doing.
Great. And Tina, thank you for that, Erica. Tina, I saw you come off mute as well. What would you like to add to the dialogue?
So it's just one little clarification, and perhaps it changed, but I started a nonprofit once. And one of the things that I think people don't realize is that in order to get a 501c status, in order to become a nonprofit corporation, you actually have to become a corporation in your state. And then from that, you apply to the federal government for the nonprofit. So there's actually no way around having to have articles of incorporation and that sort of thing if you want to get a 501c3, which is often a requirement, I think, for grants. But maybe I'm wrong. It was a while ago, but I was surprised. So I'm sharing all the things I was surprised by with the folks who are on the call today.
You said you were surprised that you had to be a nonprofit in order to receive a grant?
No, I was surprised that I had to incorporate with my state before I could even go to the federal government to seek tax exempt status.
One of the things I will say we did learn during COVID was there are businesses, obviously there are businesses here that intend to do charitable things with the dollars that they receive. So a little bit more flexibility in what organizations can do when they're for profit and nonprofit, but the end result is the charitable purpose that we're looking for.
And I think that, you know, this is a great conversation to have because I see one of the questions is coming about what's the panel's opinion about B Corps instead of being a nonprofit. And I got lots of opinion, but I'm not a panelist. So I'm going to, to ask our panelists to share their insights and opinion. And if someone wants to at least, identify what benefit corporations are, and then we can go from there. So I always look to the lawyers on the screen first. So sorry, guys.
Yeah, so B Corp usually is meaning there could be a certification from B Labs, which is a nonprofit, and then a benefit corporation is actually a legal structure. So one of the variety of legal structures for social enterprises. My view is we look at what you're doing. So we say, is what you're doing in the revenue you're raising and what you're using the money for, is this going to qualify for income tax exemption? Or is this really a business? Are you selling a product or a service at market rate? And we kind of say the legal form is going to follow what your business plan is. So we look at that. There may be a little bit more work for the founder to do in order to get to that point, but we don't say, I'm starting a social enterprise and it's going to be a benefit corporation. We say, what are you doing? And how are you getting money? And what are you using the money for? So that's usually our main thing, is that legal just following the legal structure just follows what you're doing.
No, thank you for that clarification, Erica. Any thoughts on B Corp versus nonprofit from the panels?
You know, there are more nonprofits, so I go for nonprofits over B Corp right now. It's a little less murky for me. So that's the majority of the organizations that are members of Forefront, of course, are nonprofits.
Great. So I will add one thing here, and so I'll take the moderator's point of privilege on this too. So I just, in full disclosure, so I'm a CPA by background. And so what I like to stress, and I think, Erica, you hit the nail on the head in terms of, it really is about your business model, period. And I think people often lead with, I'm a nonprofit or I'm a for-profit. That to me is less relevant as much as it's relevant as this, you know how you're going to raise money, period, regardless of your tax structure. And then to your point, Erica, find that structure to figure it out that is conducive to how you want to operate your business. And at the end of the day, you really, whatever drives your revenue is what you need to pay attention to. And I've always said that nonprofit is a tax, that is not a business model. And so, we often will lead with that. But the fact of the matter is that you need to know how you're going to raise revenue, pay your expenses, pay your people, pay your rent, all of that, regardless of your tax status. And, Tina, I know that you can attest to this, that I'm a firm believer that partnering with our government, whether city, county, federal, are great ways for any business to continue to grow and provide the services that they can provide, which is why we're all here today. So anything else to add on that front? And I'm going to look for a question really quickly because I know we're running up on time. So one of the questions here is that, do you have to have a certain amount of money before you apply to be a nonprofit organization?
Absolutely not. It doesn't require you to have any money. However, as Dory said, you need to know how you're going to raise money. You need to have an idea of, some of us are quite blessed with folks who just want to pour money into our idea. That's great. But after that, what is going to happen?
And I can't emphasize that point enough. And I know the folks on this call are really interested in doing business with the government, which is why they're here. But I think that you have to be smart about how you do that business, period. And I'll speak to one of the things, and one of the reasons I want to participate on this panel as a large nonprofit. I think it's really important that we also play a role and buddy and mentor other businesses, just like you see in the for-profit community. You will have larger multinational corporations mentoring and buddying with smaller organizations, particularly now with more folks focusing on supplier diversity. I feel like we, as in the nonprofit sector, have to do the same type of thing. And that's something that I'm asking the YMCA under my leadership to make sure that we're doing more of that buddying and supporting other nonprofits, particularly smaller ones that may not have the legal or the accounting resources that's necessary to take on these opportunities in confidence. And so I think that that's something we really have to focus on as a sector to make sure that we have good folks to do the work, but how do we make sure that that infrastructure that they need to support the types of contracts and the opportunities that are available to really be able to go after those with some confidence. So I think that's all of our jobs and responsibilities there. So I'll get off my preaching soapbox, but I wanted to make sure we make that point. Tina, this is a question. Can sole proprietors be eligible for ARPA funding?
So I'm trying to see if any of my money people are on the call. Dean, are you still on? I see his name. I don't know. He's actually from the county, but I think that the issue, I don't know the answer directly, but what I do know is that our efforts certainly at the city level, and I know with our partners at the county and the state level, are to reach those small micro organizations, many of which are sole proprietors, because again, we know they are often doing the most important work closest to the ground. And so I don't think there's an absolute ban on sole proprietors. I think there are some rules about showing your financial sort of like capacity and that sort of thing. But certainly our goal is to reach down to these smaller micro organizations and companies.
Great. So Monique, I know we're running up on time. So one question here for you, does Forefront help nonprofits with board development and board membership?
We do. So we do a series of workshops that help you figure out how to build it, how to maintain it, how to recruit. So that is a benefit of being a member of Forefront, and just the idea of sharing with colleagues on how to do it. So absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, ladies, we are up in 2 minutes, well, actually 1 minute, but any final thoughts? Chandra, Erica, Tina, Monique, any closing thoughts?
I saw the one question about not-for-profit versus nonprofit, and Dory sort of answered it. Nonprofit is a tax status. Not-for-profit is a way of working that you cannot accept donations as a not-for-profit. So think about that and look those up, whoever was thinking about it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I think we're getting a hook because Erica just.
No, I have a final thought. No. Like,
okay.
Wayne needs to turn his camera off.
Okay.
I love
Bring Erica back. Where'd she go? Bring her back to the spotlight.
but here's what I want to say. I thought was such an important conversation, and I hope you will work with us. Are my friends at the county and state? We need to continue this conversation. And so you're not off the hook, because I'm going to be bugging you. And I'm sure my friends at the county and the state will be bugging you, because there's a level of detail that you all are able to provide to these organizations that we're trying to reach that only you can give. And the buddy system that you've been talking about, Dory, I want to talk to you about that too. We don't get to equitable distribution of these funds unless we help these small micro organizations and small micro companies. And so lots of work left to do. Really appreciate you all being on this panel and bringing your wisdom and your heart, and looking forward to working with you some more.
Great. And quickly, if I saw Chandra unmute, just want to make sure, and then I'll close this out. Tina, thank you. Chandra.
I'm not going to hold us up too long. I was only going to beat the drum on your soapbox story. The buddy system collaboration, it's pivotal, it's critical now more than ever before. So let us know how we can help you do that.